Music school is so weird. Now, don't get me wrong, I have very fond memories of my time in music school and conservatory, but you have to understand it's probably different from anything you've ever experienced in your life. But how weird is it actually? Well, follow me. I'll take you on a typical day I had as a graduate student at the New England Conservatory of Music. Normal to me, but very weird probably to you. The day started with me walking with my cello on my back out over the cold streets of Boston to pick up the subway, which we call the T, trying not to slip and fall on my butt or on the cello, which would be even worse. And then I'd have a 20-minute ride in with my cello, either sitting down holding the cello or awkwardly standing with the cello holding on for dear life. What was my goal? I was trying to get in the moment the doors opened at 6 a.m. so I could practice from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And that's because practice rooms fill up very fast, even though there's over 100 of them. And what would I do in those 3 hours, you ask? I would practice only technique at that time. I would do scales, arpeggios, thirds, sixths, octaves, scales within octaves, tenths, trill exercises, vibrato exercises, and anything you can think of. I didn't work on any music. I didn't even work on studies. I was just working on basic technique. I wanted to build up the strongest, most bulletproof technique I could have. But what would happen at 9 a.m.? Would I have a rest? Nope. On many days at 9 a.m., it was time for orchestra rehearsal. There were a few orchestras at New England Conservatory, and the cellists rotated, but those rehearsals went from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Now, bear in mind, I've already practiced 3 hours, and now we're having a 3-hour rehearsal on top of that. There is a break. It's a 15-minute break, but otherwise, you're pretty much playing the whole time. I loved it. We were playing some of the greatest repertoire and some new repertoire, sometimes by living composers. But I got to admit, as we got close to that noon hour, I was starting to get tired. So where did I go from there? Well, of course, I went to Taco Bell. Why? Because back then they had a 69-cent burrito, and I could get that with some water, and I'd save a lot of money. Was I thin back then? Yes, I was. And the other thing I liked about the burrito was you could eat it quickly so I could get back to work, and it hit the spot. Sometimes not in the way you were hoping to, but it did hit the spot. So after scarfing down that Taco Bell, I would go across the street to the cafe to get a large coffee, and then I would go to the library. Invariably, I would be researching some obscure composer from the 1500s, or maybe looking at something like set theory or 12-tone theory or serialism. But usually what would happen is I'd fall asleep in my book at that time for about 20 or 30 minutes and wake up and continue on with the research I had to do. And that coffee would stay in my hand for many hours after that. By 2 o'clock, I would probably go to a class, probably the only thing that resembles something that you've done, a normal class such as Music in the 20th Century, which is basically a history class, but just about composers and their approaches to music. So that's probably something that you would recognize. If I wasn't going to that class, I'd probably be in something totally different, like a music theory class. What's a music theory class? It's sort of a blend of mathematics, music deconstruction, history, and mysticism sometimes. But you're taking apart a piece of music, almost reverse engineering it to see what makes it tick. It's very fascinating, but can be very brain numbing at sometimes. By the way, that's what I teach in college now, music theory. Now, that class would probably end 90 minutes later, so I'd have a short break. There actually was a snooze room at New England Conservatory that many students took advantage of. If you got there early enough, you could fall asleep on a couch. Some people just lay out on the carpeted floor and had a snooze there. If you needed it enough, it didn't matter where it was. At about 4 o'clock, I would probably have a chamber music coaching. Now, what's that? That is a lesson for a small chamber group that you're in, such as a string quartet or piano trio. Maybe we were doing something like the Bartók Sixth String Quartet, which is very thorny and very difficult, even just to get all the moving parts together, to get it in tune, to get it sounding good, is very difficult. But we would appreciate studying with the masters like Eugen Lehner or Ben Zander, someone who could inject that bit of music, that last bit that made everything come together miraculously. I loved my chamber music coaches. They were amazing. Once a week, you would have your lesson. That's something that you might be familiar with. It's just like lessons you had, except much more intense, and you were held to an extremely, extremely high standard, especially at a place like New England Conservatory. But in any event, after that coaching, our lesson was over at 5 p.m. Where did we go? That's right, back to Taco Bell for your second 69-cent burrito, and probably across the street again for another coffee, because by this time, that first coffee would definitely be gone. By now, the sun has set and the snow is falling. It's one of those New England winters where everything just freezes in place. And I went back into the school and I would find a practice room if I could. What would I prefer? Wrong question. Any room that was open, I would take. I would take a broom closet. I just needed a room to practice. I've done so much playing already. What would I be doing? Well, remember, I've only done technique. So now I had to practice the actual music I was working on. A Brahms sonata, the Algar concerto, or maybe excerpts from the string quartet I was working on. But realize by now that's 5 hours of practice. But with the coaching and with the orchestra work, that's 9 hours of playing. And that's a normal day. That's why it's normal to us, but probably not normal to you. You basically have your cello in hand all day. You have your instrument in your hand all day, or you're in a class about music or deconstructing music. So now it's about 8:30 p.m. and it's time to go home. So I put on my big coat, I put my backpack on, I put my cello on my back over the backpack or to the left of it, walk out to the the subway, and take the 25-minute ride home. And because I have homework to do for the classes, I'll probably start it on the T. If I'm lucky, I get to sit down. Then I can very carefully try to get in my backpack, open up my book, and start working on that homework, get a 25-minute head start on it. And now that I'm home, I take off my cello, take off the backpack, peel off my coat, maybe get myself a third cup of coffee for the day, and go to my room to start working on the rest of that paper, whatever it was, because I probably got something due that next day. And then I have 3 other roommates. So finally at 10 p.m., I can relax a little bit and go out to the common area. We'll all sit down and honestly, probably just watch an hour of TV. Maybe that part's normal. At 11 p.m., the other guys want to watch a bit more TV. But at that point, I'm usually completely spent, burnt out. So I go back to my room, change for bed, get in bed, close my eyes, and tell myself I'm the luckiest person in the world. Being a music student is completely strange, wonderfully unique, and one of the most treasured experiences I have in my whole life. If you're a music student or were a music student, what was your experience? Or if you're in a totally different field, tell us, what was your experience? Was it anything like what mine was, or was it weird in a different way? Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.